Hello everyone, my name is Ismail and welcome to my channel MiTutorials. In this tutorial, I will be teaching you how to create this insightful column chart. Now you can simply drag and drop values to create column charts, but it's equally important to provide that insightful information to the users to be able to quickly understand what is happening. For example, in this particular chart over here, we are comparing two different periods. The selected here over here is from the slicer. For example, I can choose 2023 over here, and now we are comparing the year 2023 with the previous year, which is 2022, and also we are displaying the variances over here. So this tutorial was originally posted by Jefferson on YouTube, and all the credit goes to him. And without further ado, let's get started with this tutorial. So let me show you the data set that I have over here. I have a sample sales table, and then I also have a calendar table. Now, if you don't know how to create a calendar table, there's a dedicated tutorial on my channel. Please check it out. I'll also leave a link to that particular video somewhere here on top right. And now let's start by creating some measures. The first measure that I will be creating here is called total sales. I'm going to use the simple calculate and some function over here to calculate the total sales amount from my sales table. And now I have my total sales measure created. Let's create another measure here to calculate the sales for previous year. I'm going to call this as previous year sales is equals to calculate total sales. I'm going to use the same period last year function over here and pass in the date from my calendar table to bring in the sales for the same period last year. Okay, and then let's confirm this. And now let's create another measure to calculate the variance between the previous year and the current year. So I'm going to call this as YOY, year on year, is equals to, I'm going to use the divide function here. I'm going to use the total sales minus previous year sales divided by the previous year sales. Now this will return the variance percentage for me between the present year or the selected year and the previous year. Let's start by adding a visual over here. Let's first add a slicer and then bring in the year from my calendar table. All right. And now that I have created these measures over here, let me add another visual here. This time probably a card, and then bring in all the visuals or the measures that we created. My total sales, my previous year sales, and the percentage. And now when I select the year 2023 from this drop down over here, it is telling me the selected year, which is 2023, the sales is 1 million. The previous year sales was 737,000 and the difference is 36.9%. So let's proceed with our tutorial. I'm going to create a new table over here and I'm going to call this table as metric. And the first column here, I'm going to call this as axis, and my first row over here, the value is going to be previous year. The next row over here, I'm going to leave that blank and I will explain why I'm doing this. And then on the third row, I'm going to call this as selected year. And let's add another column here called as order, and then let's order them as 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to click on load. Let's go back to my data view and then let's go to metric and then sort my axis table here by the order. And now let's go back, let's add a new visual over here and let's go to the data tab and bring in the metric from the axis from our metric table. Now you see that we have a table over here which has previous year, a blank row, and then the selected year. So now it's time for us to populate the sales value that we have over here on this particular table. So to do that, we will have to create another measure. I'm going to create a new measure here and I'm going to call this as dynamic sales. I'm going to define a variable over here called selected value is equals to, I'm going to use the selected value function over here and pass in the axis column from our metric table. And then I'm going to say return, and over here I'm going to use the switch statement followed by true, comma, and on the next line here I will say if my selected value is equals to previous year, then this needs to return the measure that we have created for the previous year. So I'm going to type in previous year sales, comma, and then my selected value is equals to selected year. Then I need to return my total sales measure, else this needs to return a blank. All right. And then let's confirm to this particular DAX over here, and then let's bring in this particular measure into our table and let's change this back to a table over here. You will see that we are now seeing previous year value, which is 736,700, and the selected year, which is about a million. But we have lost the blank row over here. To bring the blank row back over here, let's go to our build a visual tab, and then right click on axis and then click on show items with no data, and now we have that blank row visible over here. Now let's change this visual to the clustered column chart, line and clustered column chart. Let's increase the size of this particular visual, and let's turn on the data labels. And now we have previous year, we have our blank value somewhere hiding over here, and then we have the selected year. It's now time for us to create the line here between the previous year and come like this here and connect this to the selected year and display the variance over here. But the problem is we don't have enough space to create that line over here, which means that we will have to expand the range on the y-axis. And this particular range needs to be dynamic, because right now the maximum value that you see on the chart here is about 0.78 million, and that can change here based on what we choose. For example, if I select 2022 over here, our values can come down or go up. If I select 2021, our values are somewhere in the same range, but you might see that difference between the years when you select. So that particular range over here needs to be dynamic. So let's see how we can create that dynamic range. And now we will have to create a measure to dynamically identify the range which can increase based on the max value over here. So we have two different columns over here, which is one is the previous year and the other is the selected year. So first of all, we will have to find the max value here for the previous year. Once we've identified the max value for the previous year, and then we will have to identify the max value for the selected year. And between the max value of both previous year and selected year, we will have to identify the max value and then multiply that particular value with a certain number to increase our y-axis range dynamically. So let's see how we can do this using a measure. I'm going to create a new measure, and let's call this measure as y-axis range is equals to, let's start by defining a variable over here. I'm going to define a variable called as selected category is equals to, I'm going to say all selected, and pass in the category column that we use to create the small multiples. And on the next line over here, I'm going to define another variable. I'm going to call this as max previous year value is equals to, I'm going to use the max function here and pass in the selected category variable that we just created as the table argument, followed by a comma. And then within the expression over here, I will pass in the measure that we created for previous year sales. Now what this will do is it will basically iterate over all the rows and identify or bring us the maximum value of the previous year between these two categories. And let's see that. Let's write a return statement and type and say max py. So if I create a card of the y-axis range over here, you will see that the maximum value here, which is 386,000. And if I change this to 2022, you will see that the maximum value probably is the wrong example to look at. Look at this, 0.41 million and 0.36 million. The maximum value between these two categories here is 0.41, and that is what is being displayed over here. Now, similarly, we will also have to identify the maximum value here for the selected year. So let's create a copy of this particular line over here and change this to current year, and then change this to total sales. All right, and now if I say maximum current year, this will return the max value for the current year, which is about 710,000. And now we need to identify the max value between the previous year and the current year. So to do that, I will define another variable here saying max underscore value is equals to, I'm going to use the max function here and pass in both the variables that we've created, which is max cy and max py, and then return the max value in my return statement. And then I'm going to click on confirm, and now you will see that our max value is 710,000. If I change this to, let's say, 2023, you will see that our max value is 784,000. That is exactly what we have over here. Let me get rid of this card now. We need to make one more change in the y-axis range. We need to multiply the max value here by about 1.5 times. So this will return about a million or so. Let's go back to our build a visual or the format tab, and let's head over to the y-axis, and within the range over here, you see there is something called as maximum as well. I can click on the conditional formatting. I can use the field value as an option here, and from the measure list I can choose the y-axis range and click on OK. The moment I do that, you will see that the y-axis range has now changed, and now I have enough space to create the line here that I was intending to create. And now we need to add the baseline over here. So we need a line something like this, and then we need a line connecting to this particular column here, and then a line connecting to this particular column. So before we add these two bars over here, let's add the baseline over here. Now we created the y-axis range over here, which basically identified the max value and then multiplied the max value here by 1.5 times. Now we can use the same y-axis range and reduce that by certain percentage. So let's see how we can do this. So what I will do is I'm going to come here, I'm going to create a new measure. I'm going to call this as baseline, and then I'm going to refer the y-axis measure, and I'm going to multiply that by 0.8 times. And now what we need to do is we need to add the baseline into our y-axis field over here. And now you see that we've added the baseline on both of these visuals at about 0.94 million, which is 80% of our max range which we use for our y-axis over here. The reason why the baseline is overlapping on the column over here is because the line is using a separate y-axis in itself. So if you see over here, this is the axis which is being used here for the line over here. So what we need to do is we need to turn off the secondary y-axis. So if you go to the format tab and then turn off the secondary y-axis, you will see that both the baselines have now started to appear just like the way we wanted. So if you want to move this a little higher, what you need to do is you need to go back to your baseline and multiply this by about 0.9. And then when you click on confirm, you see that the line goes a little above. So probably I'm going to use 0.85 over here because 0.9 seems to be a little higher than what I expected. This seems to be fine at 1 million range. And then let's head over to the format tab over here and come to data labels, and under apply settings to series, let's select the baseline over here, and then I'm going to turn off the data labels because we don't need the data labels. And now let's go back to our year and choose the different year over here. You see that it remains the same, but however, when I select 2020, the line still appears. I don't want the line to appear over here because we don't have any preceding year to compare our sales with. So to get rid of the line when we select the year 2020 or when we don't have the previous year sales, what we need to do is go back to our measure and add an if statement over here. If not is blank. What am I checking over here? I'm checking for my previous year sales. So if this is not blank, I'm going to close the bracket here, comma. If this is not blank, then I want my y-axis to be calculated. Else I want this to return for blank. I'm going to press enter here and type in blank. I'm going to close the bracket and press enter, and now you see that we don't have the line appearing. But when I select the year 2022, the line starts to appear again. Now let's add the variance to this particular baseline over here. So to do that, let's add a new measure now. Let's call this as variance. Now this is where the blank value or the blank row that we had in between of these two rows comes into the play. So I'm going to define a new variable here. I'm going to call this as selected value is equals to, I'm going to use the selected value function over here from the metric axis. And then I'm going to say return. What is it that I want to return? I want to check if my selected value is equals to blank. Then it needs to return the line value that I have over here, which is nothing but the measure that I created, baseline. I'm going to say I need baseline, else I want this to return blank. I'm going to close the bracket here and press enter. And now what I will do is I'm going to bring the variance here into my y-axis again. So this is the variance. I'm going to drag this into my line y-axis again, and you see that we've now got that particular marker over here, which is denoting, or which is the place where we will be adding the variance. Now let's go to the format tab over here and then turn on markers here, and then let's expand this and then let's select baseline and turn off the markers because we don't want the markers towards the end. Then let's come back to variance over here and then let's turn on the show marker, and then we can also increase the size here if you would like to. We can change the color from here. Let's go ahead with something with this color or maybe something orangish. Let's go with little darker color. So this looks good. You can also select different shapes if you would like to. Let's go ahead with the circle for now. And now what we will do is we will have to change this to display percentage. So to do that, let's go back over here, select variance, and then what we need to do is from the format section, I need to change this to dynamic so that I can choose what I want to display over here. So what I want to display here is basically the variance that we created, which is year on year. So what I will do is I'm gonna add in quotes 4 times and concatenate that with the year on year variance that I have, and then concatenate again and 4 times quote again, and then I'm going to confirm this. And now you see that we have started to display the percentages for both of these visuals. And now we will have to also format this to display as a percentage. So what we will do is we will make use of the format function over here. Within the value, we'll pass in the measure here and then format this as 0.0%. Close the quotes here and press enter or commit to this particular DAX. And now you see that we've now started to display the percentage values. And now let's add some conditional formatting to this so that it appears in green whenever the percentage is greater than 0, and then it appears in red whenever there is a negative value over here. So let's come back over here. Let's create a new measure. I'm going to call this as conditional format is equals to, I'm going to say if my year on year is greater than 0, then return green, else return red. You can also choose to have your hex values over here. And now let's go to the format tab. Under data labels, let's select variance over here. Let's scroll down and you have color over here. Let's click on the conditional formatting button over here. From the drop down, let's select field value. What field should we base this on? You'll have to choose the conditional format year over year and then click on OK. And now you see that the negative values are appearing in red and then the positive values are appearing in green. We can also choose to make this bold over here, and that looks nice. Now let's try to add the up arrow or the down arrow here based on the value. So to do that, so there are many websites out there which help you with the Unicode symbols. So symbol.cc is one of that website. I'm going to select this particular arrow because I like this. I'm going to hover over this and click on copy. And now I'm going to go back to the variance measure that we created. And from this particular drop down, let's click on format. So this is where we were formatting earlier. Now we need to make one change over here. We need to paste the value that we copied from that particular website, and then followed by a colon over here, and then let's go back to the website, and now let's copy the down arrow over here. Let's hover over the down arrow, click on copy. Back in Power BI, I'm going to paste this, give it a space, and then copy paste this particular code here again, and then I'm going to click on OK. So once this is done, you see that now we have the up arrow here for the green values and then down arrow here for the negative or the red values. And now it's time for us to add these lines here to connect from the baseline to the column over here. So to do that, we will be making use of the error bars here. Let's go to the format pane over here, and then if you scroll down, you have something called as error bars where you can enable these bars. Now before we do that, let's add another measure over here. Let's create a new measure here. I'm going to call this as PY line or previous year line is equals to, I'm going to define a variable here called as selected value is equals to, I'm going to use the selected value function again and then pass in the metric access column that we created, and then followed by a return statement which says if my selected value is equals to previous year, then I want this to return the baseline value over here. So I'm going to select baseline over here, else this needs to return blank. I'm going to close the bracket here and press enter. And now we need to bring in the PY line onto our chart. So we'll drag the PY line into our line over here. You will see that we've now created a little marker over here. So let's go back into our format tab, and under error bars over here, let's select the py line and let's turn the markers or the error bars on over here. And then we will have to define, we already have the upper bound over here, which is calculated, and now we need to define until where we need to bring this particular bar down till. So to do that, we will click on add data on the lower bound, and on the measure list over here, let's select previous year sales. So that will define that it needs to come and end over here. And then we need to make some changes over here. Let's change the bar color to about blue, and then let's also increase the width to about 2. And then we have a little marker over here. We don't need that marker, so let's change the marker shape to none. And then let's scroll up a little. We have markers over here. Let's choose the py line marker and turn off the marker here. And also let's scroll up to data labels, and then let's choose py line here and turn off the data labels for py line. And now we need to remove this particular marker over here. To do that, let's head back into our markers over here. Let's choose the py line over here. Unfortunately, if I just turn off the marker does not go away. So I need to make some changes over here. Let me choose the smallest dash that I have over here and reduce the size to about 1 pixel, and then change the default color here to a little darker color. And then we're also seeing another line over here. So let's go to the line section over here and choose py line, and then come down to stroke width and reduce this to 0. And now you see that the marker has sort of disappeared. We will have to repeat the same thing here for the selected year as well. So let's go back over here to py line. I'm going to copy this measure. I'm going to come here and create a new measure. I'm going to call this as cy line. And then if my selected value is selected year, then I need the baseline, else blank. I'm going to confirm this, and then I'm going to go back to my build a visual tab and bring in the cy line over here into the y axis, and you will see that we've created a marker over here. So let's go back to format tab. Let's go back to error bars and let's choose cy line over here, and then let's turn on the option for error bars. And then we already have the upper bound, so we need to define the lower bound. I'm going to click on add data, go to measure list. This time I'm going to add total sales. And we will also have to repeat the process. Let's turn off the tooltip under bar over here. Let's choose the color for the bar here, which is this dark blue. Let's also increase the width to about 2 pixels. And then let's change the marker shape to none over here. And now we have the line created. So we need to go back to the marker section, and now let's choose cy line over here. And then let's change the type to the smallest dash that we have and reduce the size to about 0. And also we need to change the color here of the marker. Sorry, I forgot to do that. Marker color default, I'm going to change this to a little darker color. And now let's go back to lines again, and under cy line, let's reduce the stroke width to 1. And then we need to make one more change because we have the labels appearing over here. I'm going to go to data labels, select cy line and turn off the data labels. And now when you choose a different year over here, you will see that this is dynamically changing and displaying that the previous year sales was 0.71 million, which is reduced by 23.1%, whereas for food grains, this is reduced by about 14.2%. So this is how you can create the variance chart using the native Power BI visuals. I hope you like this tutorial. You have learned something new today. Please consider subscribing to my channel for more such tutorials.